Welcome to OhSister, where I unpack my Mormon sister missionary journals 10 years later. If you grew up Mormon, you probably are familiar with the phrase, smile that frown away. If you don't remember what that is, or if you haven't heard that before, let me read to you the lyrics of this little song that you learn growing up in primary during singing time. It goes, "If you chance to see a frown, do not let it stay. Quickly turn it upside down and smile that frown away." There's another verse too, but I feel like the first one is telling enough. It's pretty to the point. Well, the point being, within Mormonism, this is probably also sort of just like an American, like, I know it's bigger than like the Mormon culture, but within Mormonism especially, there is this pride and like purpose in being happy and joyful, and on the reverse side, like this shame of not being happy, of like frowning, especially in public. Being raised as a Mormon, especially as a girl, I just always felt this emphasis on being like happy and joyful, and like being encouraged to lift other people's burdens, but like if you're the one who's getting help, it's like not as good as if you're the one who's giving help. So like always sort of being happy and being faithful and cheerful and being available to serve and give to other people who may be struggling, but like of course never struggling yourself. Like I remember when I was 8 or 9, and I was choosing to fast or go without food for a few meals, even though that wasn't expected until I was like, a little bit older, but I wanted to do it because I thought it was a good spiritual practice. But it was hard because I was little and I was at my grandma's house, and I remember being in the kitchen and like waiting for food and just complaining to her that I was so hungry. And I remember her like, she kind of like stopped and looked at me and was like pretty serious. She said like, "Ally," maybe even Allison, like seriously, "Ally, you should be grateful to fast because not everyone is able to fast. So like, don't be sad about it. Like, be grateful." And I remember feeling like pretty embarrassed and like, oops, you're right. I should be grateful, like how careless I was. And I think also part of what the lesson from that is like, maybe it's uncomfortable to be like really hungry and like I'm inside know that I really want food, but it's not appropriate to share that. Like I shouldn't complain and like make other people have to deal with my discomfort. Like I should just sort of deal with it on my own. And like as I grew up, and especially on my mission, I was super obsessive about, learning about the doctrine because that's what we were supposed to do so we could teach it. And it seemed to me like the doctrine said that like Jesus will take away your grief and your pain. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the doctrine. And so I was really trying to work hard on living the doctrine and not just learning it, but I really wanted to be as Christ-like as I could. And I felt that one of the best ways to do that was to be happy and to not like complain and to not like be visibly upset around other people because I didn't want to drag them down. At this point in my mission, this is like my second to last week with my trainer. So we've been together long enough that she's probably starting to notice that I am like trying to always stay happy, and like weird stuff's probably coming out sideways from me because it's actually really hard to repress all non-cheerful, non-happy parts of yourself. Like if you do that, it turns out like uh it turns out you I've heard the phrase like it comes out sideways from like some psychotherapist that I watched their content, but if you if you're trying to only present the parts of yourself that you feel are like good and happy, then the parts of you that are upset or whatever is still going to find its way out in like weird passive aggressive undercurrents or whatever. So I've been with my trainer long enough for that to be happening. And it's interesting now, like as an ex-Mormon, like working on deconstructing and not completely deconstructing, because I think there are parts of the way that I was raised that are like, always important to me and will always be in my worldview. But I want to like look at my past and sort of question things that I've always taken for granted and like adjust my values and my actions accordingly. So yeah, it's really interesting to look now at the Utah culture and realize how many instances that there were growing up and there are like in the news when there's a family that looks super happy and good and they are really just following like the Mormon covenant path, like happy husband, happy wife, he has a really good job, she's a stay-at-home mom, they have all these happy beautiful children. And then, like, someone finally breaks from all the pressure and their family system has an implosion. There's, like, all this drama. It turns out maybe there was domestic violence or, like, a secret affair or some, like, big thing going on that because of the pressure to always be looking good, instead of people reaching out for help, they, like, have to hide it. But of course, in the instances where, like, the repression and the hiding like can't be sustained because of whatever happens, there's always then this like really vicious gossip mill that happens from the community around them as well. So now it's like really icky for me to remember the gossip that I was at times participating in because it was part of my culture and my community, but just remembering like when we see when we as Mormons see other people who are like doing their best, but then it turns out they had all these problems going on and that someone's like getting divorced or whatever. There's like this vindictive pleasure in seeing other people like struggling, and I think like of course, I don't think this like family implosion is the destiny of most families, even Mormon families. I think this is a bit of an anomaly for it to be like a really big thing, but I do think that it shows the cultural pressure to always be putting your best foot forward and always looking the part, like at the risk of bare minimum, just like losing all of your social capital. So I really think like it's a big issue with isolation and having to hide what's going on within yourself and then, within your relationships. It keeps problems in the dark, and instead of healing, things just like fester and get worse and worse. And to me, that's one of my big issues with like Mormonism and like Mormon culture is from my perspective, there's just so much generational trauma in the system that's passed down. And if we can't make the trauma more visible, meaning if people can't like recognize within themselves that they're struggling, and if they can't reach out to their friends and family and communities to say like, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ, without without shame, like it's never gonna get better. So like I think like in order for Mormonism to become like a religion that I would be comfortable associating with again, and for it to be like what I would consider to be a healthy thing, there would have to be a lot more honesty and a lot more um, authentic sorrow and suffering and struggling just as much as the celebration of the joys and all of the good things in life, because I know that's important, but I just think like nothing good ever comes from hiding your problems in the dark. And before I jump into the journals, I just wanted to shout out those of you who have shared this podcast with people in your circle. This week, I actually made a connection with someone who listened, and because it was shared with them, and they felt like it really resonated with them, and we ended up having a phone call, and we talked about different aspects of our Mormon lives, and it was really cool. Like honestly, that's really why I'm doing this, is to not only look at my past and realize the things that I was doing then that were like unhealthy that I probably am doing now, and kind of grapple with that, but also to provide a way for other people to listen and connect and feel seen and validated. And if it can go to the point where we can actually connect like in person, that's really cool for me. So if you're listening and you want to get in touch, maybe at some point I'll make a dedicated Instagram account or something for this podcast. But for now, you can always look me up online. Facebook is probably your best bet if we aren't close in real life. But I'd love to connect, and please, I guess I'll do the missionary thing that I've been ranting about for so much as being terrible, to ask you to share this with people if you think that they would benefit. Although I will say I'm not going to promise any sort of miraculous blessings for you, or I don't think this will have a huge bearing on anyone's eternal life, so maybe that makes it a little more ethical for me to ask you to share this with people you know. But with that said, let's jump into week 7. Monday, November 10th, 2014, Mission Day 41. Pictures and Preparation Day. I love it! At Walmart today, I bought 9 packs of these sheet protectors, which is enough for a little over one set every 2 months. So let the letters come, smiley face. Speaking of letters, I totally wasted my prep time today and wrote 0 letters. After shopping, we just went to Brenda's house to bake and chill until 5:30. The apple bites were delicious and it was fun, but I didn't get that social recharge that I need, so I'm hoping this week can still go well. We had an awesome lesson with Delora and Claude, though. Brother Aylman met us there at their apartment, which was decorated just so with hanging china and candles as to feel thoroughly homey and not quite American. I love it there. She fed us a creamed spinach soup and also rooibos herbal tea, and we chatted a lot about the business. And then we shared our message of the restoration, smiley face. The spirit was very much there, and we were able to tailor it so well to their understanding and questions. I felt such peace that the balance was good. Brother Aylman shared a powerful testimony too. He talked about how his wife had wanted so badly to do lessons with Delora and Claude and these missionaries, and that he knew she was there with us. Before I finish reading this day, I have to jump in and say the little like clarifications that I make in my journal anytime I'm interacting with someone who is, let alone not just American, but like usually even like not white, is pretty it's honestly jarring, but maybe not surprising to me now to read, because at the time I had hardly had interactions with anyone who wasn't a white Mormon from Utah. Um, and there was also, I probably still do, but a lot of internalized like colonialism and like racism, and specifically like the story of I need to be the savior to like go out, you could say the white savior, to go out to different communities and different cultures. And like I was, I guess at this point in my life, I was sort of getting more education around this and being like, I don't want to change people's cultures, and like I don't think it's good to make people have cultural assimilation. Yet at the same time, there was still this weird like fantasy that I had been told of like people joining the church and like feeling like they had finally found like their real community, and like having to give up really important parts of like like people in Colombia getting baptized and they like can't drink coffee anymore or whatever, and it's like a big sacrifice but like worth it. These are the stories that they tell us. So um yeah, I'm also just noticing like I wrote this for my progeny that I was, I guess, expecting to be very culturally closed. So like probably my kids and grandkids and great grandkids and great 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 grandkids will just be little people in Utah who never like who never um journey outside of that bubble. So I need to explain the vibe. Yeah. Um so I'll finish this and then I'll talk about the rest of the day. Okay. It was such a powerful spiritual experience. Yet that night, as I laid in bed, I was suddenly overcome with grief and disappointment in myself as a teacher and bearer of testimony. During their lesson, I'd really struggled to know what to say, and so allowed myself to sit on the back burner and simply watch Sister Elliot and Brother Aylman teach with power. I hadn't shared my testimony with Delora and Claude, and I guess I felt that I had really gone backwards in progression, or that I realized that what I've been working on so much hasn't been changing, that I haven't improved at all in teaching with reality and power. My first night of a watered pillow. Oh. So, yeah, reading this again was like, oh, the first time I let myself really cry and really recognize to myself that I'm upset so much that I will write it in my journal is alone on my mission. I didn't want Sister Elliot to know that I was upset and having a hard time. I also, you know, I think I was probably upset about a lot of things, but the only way I could sort of mentally feel safe being upset was by like making it be about like, oh, I'm not a good enough missionary, not like, oh, I miss my family, I'm in a completely different place surrounded by new people that I don't know, that I'm trying to like do a good job. But because in the previous paragraph I wrote, at the time I felt really good that like the balance of how we were teaching was doing really well, and I felt really good about the lesson at the time. It was just when I was reflecting on it and when I was feeling really overwhelmed and upset that I was like, no, actually, it was really bad. I'm second guessing myself. I'm second guessing that it felt good and it was actually terrible, and I'm actually terrible. I haven't improved at all. Nothing's changed. I'm not getting better. I'm going backwards. Um, I also pointed out that I didn't get a social recharge that I need. I think what that is referring to is um, I'm like a neurodivergent person, and it's helpful for me to have time alone pretty regularly just to like sort of reset my batteries down to like a good level, or I guess up to a good level if we're talking batteries. um I do love being around people, but I do just generally, I've always just kind of needed some quiet time with myself. And of course, you don't ever get that on your mission because you have to be around your companion, but at least on P days, we had times where we didn't need to be around people that we were teaching, and like there wasn't as much pressure to like perform this power dynamic all the time and like always be acting as the appropriate missionary to the highest extent. Like, hopefully on P days, we got to sort of just be a little bit more regular and a little bit more ourselves. And I think it's notable that that day I actually wrote down, wow, I hope this week's gonna go well because I didn't get time alone and I'm feeling pretty drained. Also, it made me smile that I had to clarify that I had this delicious tea, but I had to write that it was herbal tea to make sure people knew that I was still following the word of wisdom. And honestly, I know later on someone in my mission fed me some like tea and I was like, okay, it's herbal tea, right? Like I was really afraid it wasn't like herbal tea and it was like forbidden tea and it was gonna like keep the Holy Ghost away from me. I remember that happening. So I of course had to also clarify to whoever was reading that I had tea and it was fancy and cool, but it was herbal and it was safe to drink. All right, so holding a little moment of love for Sister Finlinson 10 years ago, feeling so sad, crying myself to sleep. Let's go on to the next day. Tuesday, November 11th, 2014, mission day 42. I got mail today, because we're in Nome again. My coat from Leah, early Christmas present, and a package from Vivian, fruit snacks and ninja racers. Soup's fun. So we talked to Jessica about goals today and created a roadmap of plans/goals to prepare for her baptism. I had fun drawing a worksheet, complete with a movable purple truck, where she'll be able to track her progress on the goals we've planned. We had an awesome lesson with Rhonda and Mark today, at the Kruger's home. We're back in Nome again. We watched the Restoration DVD, which was very powerful and effective in helping them understand the message. I can see an improvement in myself, as I followed the promptings of the Spirit and asked Brother Kruger to share his testimony after Sister Elliot and Sister Kruger had. The Spirit was so overwhelming, not in the weepy way, but in the peaceful, burning way. And I had the opportunity to extend to them the invitation to be baptized. Then we sat for a moment as the Spirit worked within our hearts, and I gave complete trust to the Holy Ghost. And Rhonda said yes. Mark didn't get a chance to talk, but I feel that he's on the same page. I love teaching them. It's so easy to see that the gospel of Christ is exactly what they need and what they have been looking for. Okay, so first thing, I talk about getting a coat from Leah, one of my sisters. She knew that I had been talking about not being warm enough all the time. So at the time, I think she was into like crazy extreme like mountain climbing, so she knew um all about like fancy, really good like cold weather gear. So she sent me this like super nice packable down coat that was meant to be like an inner layer between other layers. And I wore that all the time on my mission. It was really nice to wear when it got really, really cold, and I would wear it underneath my wool coat and then my big puffer coat on top. So I'd be wearing 3 coats like when it got really, really cold. Uh, yeah, it did at some points. It did get that cold that I needed to wear 3 like -30 degrees of rated coats. But yeah, that was really awesome to get that coat, and I still have it now. And it was really nice of my sister to send that to me. um, oh, talking about the restoration DVD. So actually, I didn't know it at the time, but the restoration DVD that it's probably still the same. I haven't looked it up, but the one that we use to show investigators like Joseph Smith's story, it turns out that a lot of that is not accurate to the written recorded church history, which I didn't know at the time. So I wonder how it would have felt had I known that a lot of the things that I was having these people watch and see, and I was telling them, like, yes, this is the truth, this is what happened, this is how the gospel was restored. I wonder how it would have felt if I'd known that that's not actually how it went. Or at least that's not what was written down. Um, and then I wanted to finish with talking about when I invited them to be baptized. I wrote that I invite them to be baptized, and then I sit and I wait for them. And I waited for the Spirit to like work on their hearts, and I like gave complete trust to the Holy Ghost. But what I thought was going on was we have like heightened emotion going. We just watched this movie with like big drama and like big powerful music, and then it ends, and then we have different people sharing like, yes, I think this is true, yes, I think this is true, yes, I think this is true. And then I tell them like, you should get baptized, like, will you be baptized? And then we just stop and wait. And what I thought that was doing was giving them a chance to sit and feel the Holy Ghost and feel that like burning in their bosom, and know like, yes, all these people, I'm feeling so good, I'm feeling like this is true, yes, this is something I want to do. Which is sort of what was happening, but what it was what was really happening was like pausing and putting them in a like under the microscope and saying, you are under pressure, and no one's going to say anything. We're all staring at you. We all are invested in this. We all want you to say yes. So you sit there while we stare at you and just try to say no. Like, I joke to my friends that I have like training in high pressure sales tactics, but like it's kind of not a joke. So, yeah, that's like crazy to look back on now, I guess. And uh, if you ever were a part of this, you probably are feeling similarly off-putting or off-put. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens next. Wednesday, November 12th, 2014. Mission Day 43. Sister Elliot packed today. It was hard for her, not to mention the fact that we're still moving around on top of having to gather all her stuff from Nome. We went to the little bakery on Main Street to get pastries and cocoa after. But although most people couldn't eat with us, we did get in with Rhonda and Mark again tonight and begin reading the Book of Mormon together. They loved it, and we're going to do so every time we're in Nome. It's interesting, but I'm noticing that people's animals, especially their cats, loved us. We have a calming effect, in quotation marks, on Jim and Darla's cat Tigger, and Rhonda and Mark's cat Prince Charming just jumped up on our laps for doting. They said they've never seen them act that way before. God truly does work in mysterious ways, but if the effect the Spirit has on people's pets helps them see the divinity of our calling, I'm all for it. Smiley face. I noticed today that in our prayer before Delora and Claude's awesome restoration lesson, I asked for an understanding of how we can work in greater unity. Boy, was that prayer answered. I learned a lot, even just yesterday and today, about how I need to pipe in and balance the material. Specific prayer is powerful, people. I designed my first planner cover today, smiley face. It took 2 hours. I used DNC 5024, and it's pretty sweet and motivating for myself. Let's talk about that. I had to point out that we didn't start reading the Book of Mormon with Rhonda and Mark until after at least Rhonda has committed to be baptized. Isn't that wild? Like, at the time, I didn't question that they were like, you gotta get people to commit to baptism, like hardcore. They don't really need to know anything because they have the whole rest of their lives in eternity to learn it. But you gotta get them baptized because it's so important to get baptized. But now I would have the perspective of it's good to have informed consent before joining any group or committing to something such a life commitment as joining the Mormon Church, which in theory you're committing to this for eternity, right? So I would think you should definitely read at least all of the church's doctrinal material before committing to baptism to a church, right? Not so. I think the story of me thinking people's cats liking us meant that we were called of God. I thought that was cute. I also say it out loud this time. I'm not just hinting at it, but I say, like, the Spirit has this effect on people's pets, and it will let them see the divinity of our calling. That was funny to see me say it right, say it straight. And then also, I just noticed a moment of, like, the meta commentary to the reader once again, where I'm like, specific prayer is powerful, people. That wasn't for myself. That was for whoever was reading this darn thing decades later. Thursday, November 13th, 2014, Mission Day 44. Such fun! So we woke up at 5:30 and drove to Grand Forks for interviews and to watch Meet the Mormons. The movie was fun to watch, and I was surprised by how well made it was, especially from a missionary's perspective. It was funny to watch with my zone, because I'm pretty sure we all cried when it featured the missionary mom. But yeah, President Allen and Sister Allen have watched it 8 or 9 times now. He used it as a good reminder of how important it is to journal our lives, especially our missions. There were a few things I wanted to record for my interview. So I was, of course, unsure exactly what it would be like. I was a little nervous, but I also knew there was no reason to feel that way, so I just pushed it off. But while it was slightly unreal, we had a nice conversation and I didn't even cry. Smiley face. Parentheses, I feel like I'm always crying when they're around. He said, quote, Sister Finlinson, I'm going to tell you something that I want to rattle around in your head for the next 18 months. Your investigator should teach 50% of the lesson, unquote. Bam! Never thought of that before, eh? I could be a way better missionary if I figure that one out. He told me that I have a big responsibility as Sister Elliot's trainee. She's an excellent missionary, and the more I learn from her experience, the better. So I need to ask questions, absorb every good thing, and then do it, and then do it, so we can still have Sister Elliot's knowledge and influence in the field. And to be prepared for the emotions that will come with my new trainer, I need to watch that my pride doesn't come around. Finally, he told me to 1. Fill out a new and returning member record, and 2. Give a copy to each RC and LA, meaning recent convert and less active, member. If we do so, we'll see people go to the temple. And then there's a drawing of an astonished face. We sisters all went with Sister Allen to some sweet place for lunch, which was fun. Mostly what I loved about today was our weekly planning session, especially comp inventory, meaning companion inventory. I let Sister Elliot know that I've seen such a deep love for missionary work, and I can see that she'll forever be a missionary, even without the name tag. She gave me a hug, and I started getting teary, And then she, the ultimate uplifter, had her turn. She talked about how President Allen had, in her interview, asked why I was such a dedicated missionary. And then I wrote, sniff. And she told me what she told him, that I'm here for the right reason, that I, like Moroni, cannot deny the Christ, not to anyone, not even my family. And I started bawling because I've actually worried about that so much. It's such a hard balance with Rowan and Leah. It's so hard. And Sister Elliot was so in tune with the Spirit that she said exactly what I needed to hear, and I didn't know until then. We sure love each other. It will be hard to see her go. Staying the night in Grand Forks at Sister Rowley's and Sister Pattinson's apartment. There's a lot from that day. First of all, that I said it was so much fun, and I think a normal 19-year-old wouldn't say that day was fun, but seeing as we got some freedom from our strict schedule and we got to watch a movie, even though it was, a Mormon propaganda movie, still pretty fun in comparison, right? I noticed, I talked in the intro about feeling happy all the time and trying to push away sadness with a smile. And there was a moment in here where I did that. I said, I was nervous, but I couldn't see that I had a reason to feel nervous, and I just pushed it off. And then interesting that, right after that, I say it was slightly unreal, because I think an effect of pushing off part of your emotional experience means you just sort of get all the way numbed and kind of dissociated. So I think when I was okay, I'm feeling nervous or whatever that I am not supposed to be feeling right now, so I'll just try to not do that. What I ended up doing was forcing myself into a state of numbness and dissociation. His the claim that I need to have my investigator teach 50% of the lesson was something he ended up talking about, my mission president, he ended up talking about later in training things. So I learned more about it, and it's basically, it was super confusing, but we learned about how to ask better questions in a teaching environment. And that's what he was referring to. But it was, looking at it now, I'm why would you tell a brand new missionary who was just trying to sort of figure out what the heck she was doing, why would you give this really confusing advice that you were later going to explain anyway, but just see if you could figure it out? Because it just set me up for more of okay, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm gonna try to do this, but I'm so confused. That was not helpful feedback. Then also, I wanted to point out a little bit about the dynamic of sister missionaries being praised for being excellent missionaries. I think I've talked a little bit about my experience within Mormonism of knowing that I believe the doctrine and I really believe the church was true, and it was a little bit confusing, the church versus culture thing, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me as a Mormon and as a missionary, especially just as a Mormon girl, to see women being praised and actually being valued for something aside from being a wife and a mother, a nurturer, a homemaker. So I think this is something that I was looking for in my mission, was seeing women have some sort of standing in our social environment and to experience some of that. I remember talking to women who were like members in the different areas I served in, and they would talk about how it's so cool that I was going on a mission because I would always have that. Like, after I got home, people would always like trust me more as a source of instruction and like knowing the gospel well because I had been a missionary. And I was really excited and really happy about that. And I think that this was something that I like loved on my mission was getting just the tiniest amount of representation and like attention from men and from like the leadership. Which now I'm like, that was just breadcrumbs. Like, I am now putting myself in a community and an environment that uh, gives women a lot more options and has we see I personally see women as being valuable for just their inherent being a live being, but also for exploring anything that they may be interested in and anything they may be doing, which can include being a nurturing person and a homemaker and a wife, but it doesn't have to only be that. And for me personally, I really love finding women to be my like sort of role model options of what I can be when I finding women who like are really involved in music and they have like different cool things that they've done with their careers. Um, that's been really helpful for me lately. So interesting to look back at this. And also, um, kind of along with that, interesting that my mission president was like, okay, you're going to have a new trainer coming. Now make sure that you don't get prideful and like have like get in conflict with your new trainer. I think was what he was thinking, like not get so stuck in trying to do things the way that Sister Elliot told me that I wouldn't like learn from this other person as well. But just yeah, the pointing out that the pride was such a big problem and like the conflict and not being obedient is a big problem within Mormonism, especially for women. I also um thought it was crazy that he did the whole like Mormon prophecy thing. It's getting quite a bit less common now for like the Mormon prophets to like write and receive revelation and like give it to everyone. I'm pretty sure Joseph Smith was the most prolific revelator within Mormonism. He was the one who wrote so much that is still considered to be doctrine today. And since then, there's been a pretty steep decline, especially since like the days of polygamy have ended and Mormonism tried to be a little bit more mainstream and viewed as less of like the weird fundamentalist religion and more of like we're cool like all the rest of y'all Christian churches. There's just been a lot less to the public level visible prophecy, but that does not mean that there hasn't still been like within the more closed circles of the church this still um, principle of people like speaking of promise, blessings, and prophecy. And here is one where my mission president was like, I promise you that if you fill out this church form and you give it to members and less active people to fill out, it will give them the tools that they need and you will see people go to the temple. Like that was like given and received as he gave that to me and I received it as a promise, as like prophecy from God. And then of course I have to talk about the little comp inventory we had. Um, Telling that the best way that I could think of to compliment my trainer was to say that you'll be a missionary forever, even when you're not wearing the name tag to be a missionary. And I remember at the time that felt like a very sweet sentiment, but now that just is telling to me of how much the the Mormonness, the Mormon culture, the Mormon church how it's so heavy on evangelizing, and it's not just like we're like Christian and we're like people believe in Jesus and like be happy, God is love, join us if you want to, whatever. It's kind of like the whole point of being Mormon is to like hurry and real quick do your own ordinances and then spend the rest of your time like getting dead people and alive people to be in on the group as well. And then the thing with I like Moroni cannot deny the Christ with what Sister Elliot said. So I think I've talked about it a little bit, but if not, so before I went on my mission, I think when I was in high school, but I could be a little fuzzy on this because it's been a while. Two of my older siblings left Mormonism, and I remember it being a big shock because I had always looked up to all my older siblings and known that they were super smart and always tried to be just like them, and I tried to do all the things that they did. Um, and even after they left the church, I kind of still felt that way, and I was like, I know that they both like know what's up, and I don't think that they've been duped. So probably they just like know something that I don't know, and I can honestly see myself like if if I like talk to them honestly about it, like the same thing might happen. But there was too much at stake. It's too hard to even consider leaving the church. Like it's just too much to lose. It's too much. So I just had to sort of live with that. Like I still respected them and I kind of felt like they maybe were right, but I had to just like be like, but I'm not going to deal with that because I have to be Mormon. I have to be super Mormon. I'm going to go on a mission. That's how Mormon I'm going to be. And it was lurking in my subconscious, you know? I think I said that I thought Sister Elliot was in tune with the spirit, so she knew that's what I needed to hear, but it's probably one of the things that I was just sort of repressing, and it was coming out sideways in little ways that she could tell that it was something I was upset about. And clearly I had told her because she knew about it. So that's interesting, ain't it? Okay, let's continue. Friday, November 14th, 2014. Mission day 45. I loved today. I loved it. It's gonna take a while to write. Yesterday and today I had an amazingly edifying study as I prayed for zone training meeting. I realized, I think that should say as I prepared for zone training meeting. I realized as I studied the atonement that I do not really understand it, or at least I didn't. I'm getting closer now. Zone training began with a sisters meeting. Sister Rowley, our STL, is so amazing, and she prepared an awesome one, I guess, training. So it began with Hymn 100, and then we watched the movie about how we came to have sister missionaries. She challenged us to notice and think about the lessons we're learning here. So yep, it was fun to get to play piano for our meetings too. So on exchanges, Sister Pattison went with Sister Elliot to Scranton, and I stayed with Sister Rowley in Grand Forks. And we had so much fun. We had at least 4 miracles we counted. First, we were trying to get into an apartment building to visit an LA less active member, and someone just walked in right when we got there, so we didn't have to wait, smiley face. I marked that as miracle number 1. When we were heading out, Sister Rowley decided to only take half an hour for dinner before our Relief Society meeting and eat dinner later. We headed over to Sister Gabriel's apartment. She's an awesome RC, meaning recent convert, from Liberia, staying with her mom and daughter. We had quickly planned to share Mosiah 24, my favorite chapter about strength, but when we got going and she was talking about how sad and helpless and angry she feels and how she wailed a prayer for strength, into my head popped, "Where can I turn for peace?" So I followed the Spirit and we sang it, and it was awesome. That was marked as miracle number 2. On our way to the Relief Society activity, which I might add, they were holding in a Lutheran family's home, such an awesome missionary opportunity. We would have gone to the completely opposite address, but I happened to check the invite, and so we did not go down the scary road. That was marked as miracle number 3. And finally, at the gratitude party, they fed us salad and chicken ciabatta sandwiches, which I love, and if we'd already eaten dinner, we could not have had it. Miracle number 4. So, awesome day. But besides all that, I loved working with Sister Rolly. It was really easy to speak up and balance the teaching, and it was fun to get her chatting. I helped her decide what to do about her going home hair dilemma. It was just good, and she in turn gave me good STL advice. Alright, I want to talk about the little miracles thing. Um, so, if I experience this day with the perspective that I have now, well, one, it would suck because that would mean I'm still a Mormon, but that aside, I wouldn't call those miracles. I would just say, oh, great, like some things worked out. Like, I don't think there was a big meaning behind these things working out for me, especially like trying to get into an apartment that maybe we wouldn't even be able to get into if someone like didn't let us in with the buzzer, but the fact that someone walked into an apartment before us didn't mean anything. It just meant, well, people live there, so there's going to be people going in and out. So we just happened to get there at a point when people were walking in and out. I don't think that had as much meaning as I prescribed to it at the time. And I think it's also funny that we were counting miracles. Maybe there was something we talked about at the zone training meeting that we were like, let's count miracles that happen. Or maybe it was something that Sister Rolly wanted to do, is like, we're going to go on an exchange. I haven't explained exchanges. Let me explain that. Exchanges are within your missionary area zone. You have your sister training leader, companionship. Only one of the senior companion is called to serve as the sister training leader, and then her companion just like is kind of in on it too, but really only one of them is the STL. And you're supposed, if you're the sister training leader, every 6-week period, you're supposed to go see and exchange companions with every other sister companionship in your zone. So we were doing that at this thing. Sister Elliot went with Sister Rolly's companion, Sister Patterson, and they went to our area in Scranton, and I stayed with Sister Rolly in Grand Forks. So yeah, maybe part of her STL thing was, I'm gonna have us count miracles to help the missionary I'm with feel like more supported by God, or I don't know what. But yeah, I also was totally taken aback by reading about this story again. I can actually remember going to meet Sister Gabriel's, the recent convert, and oh, I just feel like I feel for her reading this. It's 10 years later, so hopefully, I really hope she's doing better now, but she came from Liberia. There was, I don't know if there still is, but at the time there was this program to like bring a lot of immigrants from like Liberia and the surrounding countries to North Dakota, which is a terrible place to be at all, but if you're from like a warm climate, it sucks to go to North Dakota. um but so there was like a pretty big immigrant community, and I just feel for this woman coming to North Dakota for probably like work opportunities, and then I don't know all the reasons why she was feeling sad and helpless and angry and like abandoned, but I can imagine just the fact of being in a new place. It can be really hard. She joined a new church looking for community, and the church is not historically a good church for women, especially black women. And she was also a black woman, not just in the Mormon church, but in the US, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not always a bad experience, but I think it's historically and still can be really fraught at times. Clearly, I cannot speak for the community, but I can certainly pretty easily imagine that she would be having a hard time. And it sucks that the people she had to reach out for support was these clueless missionaries who all we wanted was to get people to be baptized, and once they're baptized, get them to be more Mormon. Um, at least that hymn, where can I turn for peace? At least it's not super like, it's not like, be happy, don't be sad, you can choose to be happy. It's a little bit more emotionally resonant with like, oh, I need peace. Feeling very alone, like Jesus, I need your peace. I think it's a little bit more of just general Christian vibes, so it's not the worst thing, but it's sad to reflect on that, and I hope she's doing a lot better now, and honestly, I hope she's not Mormon anymore, and I hope she's got a better community for support. And okay, also hilarious that I counted a miracle, completely jumping tones here. Hilarious that I counted it to be a miracle that we were using the wrong address to navigate to, and then I was like, oh, we're at this scary road. I'm gonna check the invitation, and look, we're not going the right way. Like, I think that was more of just like a natural like a natural flow from how things were going. I think, I don't think that was a miracle. Just saying. Uh, oh, let's get into Saturday then. Saturday, November 15th, 2014, Mission Day 46. We're back in Scranton together. It was actually hard to say goodbye to Sister Rolly. I'm so grateful that my timing for coming out has been so spot on. I'll be here for 2 Quad Zone conferences, and I get to know 2 of the 8 sisters who are leaving this month from the initial wave of 19-year-old missionaries. Sister Elliot and I stopped at Applebee's on our way home from Grand Forks to share a blondie, and then we got to head out to our lesson with Carl. We hadn't seen him in over a week, since he'd been in Minnesota for personal reasons. So we finally got to talk to him about how using our agency to act on God's commandments will bring the blessings of peace and joy that he needs. And actually, Antonia came to this appointment, and Brenda went with us tomorrow. As you can see, it is not actually on Saturday that I am writing this. Today he actually came out and said that he has been feeling very depressed these few months, very lonely and unworthy. But now he understands that going to church will help him have that social family unit he can lean on. And he actually set a date himself to come, December 7th. This was awesome, smiley face. It was a very stark contrast from the lesson with Delora and Claude, at least as far as my involvement is concerned. It's so rewarding to see myself growing in my ability to teach and share with Sister Elliot. Exchanges really helped me with that too. Sadly, Sister Martin had called us to see if we could give her a ride from the church, as she'd been hit by a deer and was borrowing the Strauss's van until her car was fixed. It's the first time she's ever asked us to help her out, and of course we couldn't do it. It's pretty much a thou shalt not drive others situation. Oh well. Hopefully she still loves us. I gotta point out that Carl, right? His name's Carl? Yes. Carl I think he was retired, living by himself. I'm not sure if he'd had never been married or if he was widowed or divorced, but I know he was a retired gentleman living by himself in a house and not really seeing people a lot. And it's too bad that when he's feeling super depressed and lonely and unworthy, that we're telling him, you need to come to church and that will fix everything. I think he had a bit of a healthier spin on it, just saying like if I go to church, I'll have more like a social community that I can lean on more. But it was November 15th when we had this lesson, and he's like, I want to come, I'll come in a month. Like, I think he had a lot, like some sort of anxiety, some some big thing going on that was keeping him stuck at home by himself. And I think he really needed like maybe a social worker or like therapy or something or like some really good friends to come in and be like, "Hey, you've you've been like really isolating, self-isolating, and we're worried about you and like we're going to help you get support." But sadly, that's not the role that missionaries have. If people are struggling, we're not like told that we need to like report them to different government agencies or not even report, just like send them information about agencies and that are available to help. Like we don't have any discussion or training on that at all. The only thing we're doing is trying to recruit people into the church. So that's like too bad, and it was interesting to read that my first commentary after that was, this is awesome. Um, I think partially I was just commenting on like I was glad that he was sort of seeing the light as it were and getting himself to do the things that we were telling him he should do rather than us trying to like drag him along the way. But alas, I do not think this is awesome at this point in my life. And then the whole driving thing, so it's for like insurance liability, but they really told us that it was a really, really big deal that we must not ever break the rule to ever drive anyone else in our missionary cars. And this actually comes up at least one other time that I feel a lot worse about. Like I'm still sad about it to this day, kind of thing. This one I'd forgotten about, but it's too bad that the woman who has been housing the missionaries at her home for free and is getting kind of annoyed with the situation and like is Mormon, so she doesn't ever like bring anything up about it because you're not supposed to complain. Like she's in a kind of an emergency situation where she's like needs a ride, and she's like, finally I can ask the sisters for something, and we're like, oh no, just like pit in my stomach. We have finally a way to like reach out to her and be helpful to her, but we can't. And also, I think it's telling of my mindset that I say, oh well, hopefully she still loves us, because that's like very black and white thinking. Even just to say, like, even to expect that this person who I hardly know, whose house I'm living in, loves me. But there is that expectation of like any Mormon you meet, especially if you're in their ward, like you're immediately like connected and you're family. You call each other brother and sister. Like you're not literally family, but you're like, well, we're all spirit children and we're all in the same community and like we all love each other. And it shows that I'm worried that I feel like a little bit out of like internal safety. Safety is not quite the right word. Like it wasn't that I felt like I was afraid of violence or something. It was just like emotionally complex in this relationship with the missionaries and this household. And I was like, oh no, we need to like not be a burden, to like have her still love us so that it's not a problem because there's no conflict resolution available, so we all need to get along. Ah! Okay. One more date. Sunday, November 16th, 2014. Mission Day 47. So many good things happened today. Smiley face. We had a lesson with Carl, and he said over and over how closed he's let himself become. He realizes that he needs people, but he's so used to not having anyone to talk to. He's so used to just telling himself to tough it out, and it's so hard for him to change. And it really shook me because I'm exactly like that. I don't know that I've ever confided in anyone, and the thought of starting is terrifying. For a while now, I've seen the need to change, but I can't make myself do it. Not today. I can't talk to Sister Elliot. I don't know why it's so hard, but I can't make myself do it, which is very selfish of me. Frowny face. Meh. 10:30 p.m. But I still kept writing, or maybe later I wrote. We did, however, have a very good day. Sister Elliot and I played a violin/piano arrangement of I Know That My Redeemer Lives, which apparently made people cry. She spoke in sacrament meeting about prophets. Felicia had her farewell. Felicia had her farewell. I sat with Sister Martin, and we're better friends again, I think. Also, the lesson we had with Carl was very neat. Antonia came to the lesson instead of going with her friends to a movie, and she shared some very helpful insights. It was a good day. Okay, so I want to talk about the big thing that just happened before this, but in this little okay, I don't want to leave on a bad note. I want to be uplifting. I want to be positive. I want to make sure that I remember the good things. Um, I I noted that I sat next to Sister Martin while Sister Elliot was up in the stand to give her talk. And I'm like, we sat together and we smiled at each other, so now we're better friends again. Like, nothing was discussed about not being able to pick her up, I don't think. And nothing was discussed about, like, hey, is this whole housing situation, like, is this working for you? No, it's just like, oh, we sat next to each other and we, like, felt the spirit and we, like, smiled at each other, so we're all good again. That's very Mormon, if I do say so myself. Also, Antonia coming to the lesson instead of going to her friends to a movie is too bad because do you remember Brother Ailman? His wife had just died. That was Antonia's mother. So I'm like, on my mission, I'm like, oh yeah, it's great to have this girl come and do missionary work instead of going with her friends to a movie. When in reality, what she really needs right now, I'm sure, is connection with her family and friends and not like pressure to go help the missionaries. You know, like if you're grieving the loss of a parent, you need so much support and space, and I'm pretty sure it's not what you need to go hang out with missionaries, you know? But let's talk about the last thing. The last thing I want to talk about today, which is me becoming shooketh and feeling like I'm very selfish for being the way that I am. It's wild to it was actually really wild to read this, and specifically to read that I wrote I don't know that I've ever confided in anyone, because I definitely have like said that I've said that that was true before, but I was like, surely it's an exaggeration. But if that's what I remembered at the time, like, it must be true. Like, there is a point on my mission where I get a companion who is, like, so fed up with um, my demand to not communicate that, like, she's like, we have to talk about our feelings. We have to. So eventually on my mission, I did have a companion who was like the first time ever that I like confided in someone, which meant not just sharing the good stuff, but also saying like, hey, I'm having a hard time with this, and like, hey, this thing that's going on in our relationship is like not great and I'm struggling with it. Um, it's it stands out to me now as I'm going back reading this, where there were 2 days in a row that we saw Carl and he was talking about being really lonely and being really isolated. And the first day I just kind of brushed it off, but then the second day I was like, oh my goodness, like I feel exactly the same. Um, and then also the fact that I say, I've been noticing that I don't do this and I can't make myself do it. I don't know why, I don't know what's going on, but I can't make myself do it. And then I say, this is very selfish of me. I think that's honestly, like, that feels a little bit unfair because um, I'm defending myself for myself here because I was raised that it was selfish to, like, Mormons, good Mormons, they like don't have problems, they don't have conflict. Um and so if you like have stuff going on, like you just don't have stuff going on is what it is. You just simply have a perfect life is what you're supposed to do. And it's like selfish to like have problems all the time and be talking to people. So it's very unfair now that I'm like now I'm like, oh no, I'm in relationships with people and I suddenly don't know how to communicate what's going on and it's selfish of me. Like, of course I didn't have that skill, you know? I wish I wish I had been able to be more compassionate with myself at this point in time because I think if I was able to look at the situation without so much shame and without just immediately blaming myself as selfish, I think it would have been easier for me to say, huh, this is something that's important, or at least it could be important. Maybe it's important to me, and I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to give myself some love and compassion and say, it's okay that I don't know, it makes sense that I don't know, and maybe I'm gonna reach out for some help. But because of the like heavy shame and repression, and like you have to only be happy and you can never struggle, that wasn't an option for me. And so that kept me closed to change. I think I think I want to leave you with these little thoughts here. You know, that which you resist persists. That's a saying. It's like a psychological saying. I think it's very true, and I think my time as a missionary is evidence of this. There was much that I was resisting and it just got worse and worse. And then I also think if you want to change something, you have to accept it first. Like, you can only change something if at first you accept that it is what it is and maybe it will never change, which it can feel like oxymoronic or even impossible. Like, that can't be real. But it has been my experience. This is honestly this problem of feeling like there's this thing that I'm not good at and I'm ashamed, therefore it's stuck that way forever and I like struggle with changing it. This is still something I struggle with a lot. Um, I am addressing it in therapy right now, so I hope that it continues to get better and I hope that I continue to get better at reaching out for help, not just from like a paid professional, but hopefully, you know, from like friends and family and community. But it has been very true from my experience that if there's something that's going on in my life or in my mind or whatever, and I feel like I need to change it, the first thing I have to do is fully accept that it's going on and not hate myself for it. I have to like see that part of myself and love it for what it is and say, wow, I see where you came from, you know, I see where this habit came from. I see how much it helped me when I learned it. Um, and I'm not going to just try to crush it out of my life. I'm going to kind of understand it and accept it and maybe see where we go from there. And that's my 7th week as a Mormon sister missionary. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to continue following my story. Ratings and reviews are really appreciated, and if you'd like to financially support this or my other creative work, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Ally Christiansen. I hope you have a great week, and if you want my advice, just remember that you can love others best when you love yourself first. Bye!